The mode sheet for the narrative essay is posted on Blackboard and is also, as all the mode sheets are, in your Composition 1 textbook. So it's important to review the mode sheet to know as you are writing if you are completing all of the required tasks for any essay. So this is good to read as you are starting and as you are revising. So your personal narrative is to tell a story from your personal experience. So this does not require any research. It just requires you to write a story about your personal experience. Now, the prompt that I give students is to write about an experience that changed you in some way, and that change could be a change in values or a change that made you think of somebody or something differently than you had before. And that person could be yourself. You might change the way you think of yourself when you have profound experiences in your life. You may be stronger than you ever knew you could be, maybe more resilient. Going to college is certainly a way to learn to see yourself differently. You are taking on difficult tasks and managing more work than you ever thought you would do in school. And so those experiences help shape the way you learn and grow and think about yourself. So you could write a story that talks about the changes that you have made and your beliefs about yourself, or your beliefs about other people or the world around you, or some value that maybe you once had that has changed and evolved in some ways. So again, there will be no sources required. This just comes from you. You can tell your own story. And you want to really paint a picture. Here at the beginning it says to help readers understand the who, what, when, where, and why of your story. So your introductory paragraph should present an implied theme or main idea that drives your story. And it should end with your thesis statement. So the narrative essay is one that is a little unique to essays in that your implied thesis statement can be one where your big reveal can happen at the end. So in traditional academic writing, you don't want any kind of surprise ending. You want to make an argument clearly in your thesis statement, and then at the end you reiterate that thesis. But then in the narrative essay, it's a story that's unfolding. So you might have a little more of a thematic statement in the beginning that kind of tells what you are going to be describing in your story. But the development of it could be saved for the end. And so that's a rare thing. That's one reason I like the narrative essay. It's kind of got that nice little story element to it, which is different than all of the other essays we write for class. So again, no sources. Your purpose is to share an experience and tell a story. And that's an important skill, actually. You will need to be able to connect to people through a story that is yours. You can make good use of that skill to calm people down if you are in a situation where someone is scared or stressed out, whether you are in the medical field or in a legal field. Being able to connect with people through story is an important skill, and you will get to practice that here through the narrative essay assignment. What person? So these are pronouns. You are going to use first person because it is your story, and it would be very strange to write about yourself in third person. So use first person. This is the only essay where you get to use first person for sure. So take a full advantage of using first person. It's kind of a nice break from all the third person academic perspective, objectivity, things that we've been doing for the other essays. The length should be between 600 and 900 words, so that's about 2.5 to 3.5 pages. You don't have to do just 5 paragraphs for this one if it doesn't fit with what you are writing. For example, if you write dialogue, you will change paragraphs. You will make a new paragraph every time you change speakers. That means you might have several paragraphs because if you have 5 lines of dialogue and it switches speakers every line, then that would be 5 paragraphs. So the paragraphs will be more variable than what you may be accustomed to with academic essays that we've practiced in this class. The organization should be chronological. Most likely it will be chronological because that generally is how events unfold. However, non-chronological can work if you are really good at making clear connections and transitions. So it has to be really clear that you've changed time and you're jumping back and forth in time if you're going to attempt the non-chronological. So be careful with that choice. Chronological is certainly going to be one that is easier to accomplish. Some stories start sort of in the middle or right at the climax and then back up and say this is how we got there. But chronological starts from the beginning with the exposition where you basically describe the setting and the characters involved in the story and that sort of thing. And then it develops into the rising action and climax and the resolution. And we'll talk about that a bit more when I show you the outline. So here's some example thesis statements from narrative papers. So a good way to write your thesis is to tell the reader what you have learned from the experience or how it has changed you in some way. So this first one says, "In that moment, I learned a very valuable lesson. We are not what we wear." So that is a change in perspective. If you believed at one time that clothing and outward appearance is super important, then that change is expressed effectively in this thesis statement. Notice the colon here. This is an excellent use of a colon. So you have an independent clause or something that could be a complete sentence, and then the colon says, "and here it is." And this is another complete sentence. We are not what we wear, but it is describing the valuable lesson. And the colon tells me that I should expect to understand what the valuable lesson is in the next word or statement. So that's what's happening there with the colon. So excellent use of a colon, whoever wrote that. So the other thesis statements are excellent. Take a look at those. Pause the video if you need to and get a sense of what kind of revelatory statements that express a change in thought or attitude or value, something that you have learned is what the thesis statement should express, and these thesis statements do a great job with that. Verb tense. Whatever verb tense you use, you should be consistent. So if you begin with past tense, continue in past tense. And again, I will caution you to be super careful with verb tense because we have been writing literary analysis essays where we've been writing in present tense, and writing in past tense really is probably going to make more sense for your story, your narrative that you are telling, because it is something that you really experienced in your past. So stick with past tense unless you are just creating some particular effect, but make sure to have someone else read it to make sure your verb tenses are making sense and are not sort of jumping all over the place. Don't get too abstract with this. It still is for a grade, even though it may be a little more relaxed. And so you want to take full advantage of doing the things that you can do well naturally, like writing in past tense, writing in first person, telling your own story without having to do any research. All of these things should help you relax and just write as well as you possibly can. All right, so here's what the outline will look like. The introduction will be similar to what you've experienced before, where you start with a hook, but the following steps to the narrative essay follow plot structure that you can be familiar with from watching the video on Freytag's pyramid and plot structure, where I explain that to you in further detail. So your hook is going to start your essay with a relevant statement that captures the reader's attention. We always want to do that. Then you're going to have the exposition, where you kind of set the scene. Tell me where you are, how old are you, something about who you are as a person, who's around you, what other characters are involved. And then your thesis. So this is, again, the one time where you can have a surprise ending. So you can have a more open thesis at this point, where you just sort of allude to something the reader can expect to see as a change in value or a change in belief. Then you'll have your inciting incident. And to incite is like to inspire or instigate. It sets the events in motion. So what happens at the beginning to get you to go on this journey that changed you in some way? And I don't mean a literal journey, or it could be a literal journey, but what sets the thoughts or the actions or the experience in motion? Was it a meeting with a friend? Was it somewhere you went? Was it enrolling in college, for example? So tell me what sets the action in motion. And you can pause here and see some of those ideas of showing and not telling. So make sure you pay attention to the difference in the way you describe what's going on. Use things that connect emotionally to your reader. Again, this is an important skill to be able to use later in life in situations where you need to be able to connect people to your situation and connect to their situations. Put someone at ease, describing a similar situation maybe you've experienced legally or medically or just in life in general. Then the rising action, you'll have some complications that lead up to the climax of the story. So what is the big event that is sort of that turning point that sort of changes your mind about things, that helps you see something in a new way? And then the falling action happens as you sort of gain resolution. Maybe you resolve whatever the climax incited, and you can describe what the other characters are experiencing or your interaction with other characters, if that is the case. And then the resolution, you can reflect on what you learned in the experience about yourself and about life in general, and that can sort of nicely lead into that what I learned about myself kind of thesis statement, which you get to end with in this case. All right, so there is no works cited, yay, because you don't have to do any research. So make sure that you look at all of your handouts every time. Use any handouts that are available as templates to do your assignments, like the outline, for example. Let me know if you have any questions at all. Make sure you come up with a title instead of leaving this here, because it's easy to forget and just leave that there as a placeholder and then not revise. So make sure instead of working title or narrative essay outline, you actually take a stab at a title, even if it's not great and you intend to revise it later. You may forget, so be aware. Go ahead and try for a title. You can always revise, but it's better to go ahead and start with something, some attention-getting title. Try your best, even at the very beginning stages of your writing. That's it. Let me know if you have any questions about the narrative essay. I look forward to reading your stories.